At age 7, she could recite pi to 100 digits. At 10, she composed concertos. By 13, she spoke 4 languages. By 20, she had vanished, not into brilliance, but into the quiet agony of being too much and yet never enough. This is the curse of the gifted child, not the struggle of failing, but the terror of ceasing to soar, not the pain of being overlooked, but the suffocation of being eternally seen as a vessel for potential, a mirror for others' dreams, a thing to be measured rather than a person to be known. You see, the world loves the gifted child. It marvels at the precocious toddler who recites poetry before learning to comb her hair, the young mathematician who dances with numbers the way others dance with music, the artist whose fingers weave colors into masterpieces long before they understand the meaning of sorrow. Society applauds, rewards, and most importantly, expects. Consider this paradox. The child praised for their genius often becomes the adult crippled by it. The gifted child does not grow up with the innocence of others. They are not allowed to stumble in the dark, to fumble through failure, to discover themselves through trial and error. No, perfection is their currency, and they must spend it endlessly. To falter is to disappoint. To struggle is to betray the identity imposed upon them. The child who once astounded is now trapped in an ever-tightening noose of expectations, a prisoner to their own abilities. What happens when brilliance becomes a burden? When the joy of discovery turns into the weight of obligation? Picture a boy, let's call him Daniel, who could play both the piano and drums. He played his first recital before he could tie his shoes. His parents beamed. His teachers marveled. "A genius," they whispered, as if it were a blessing. But gifts come with invisible contracts. By 12, Daniel's hands shook before every competition, not from fear of losing, but from the certainty that winning was his only currency for love. His identity calcified into a single question: what if I'm only valuable when I'm exceptional? Then, one unremarkable Tuesday, he stared at the keyboard and felt nothing. The keys blurred. The brilliance that had defined him had evaporated. Panic set in. If I'm not gifted, who am I? This is the first betrayal of giftedness. It grants you wings, then demands you never land. Imagine these geniuses begin to tremble before every performance, every test, not out of excitement, but out of fear. Fear that they will no longer be the child prodigy, only the child who was once prodigious. They are now paralyzed by the pressure to outdo themselves, their creativity smothered by the knowledge that they must always be extraordinary. Imagine the mathematician who solved complex equations as a child, but now finds solace in simpler numbers, longing for a time when their mind was not a battlefield. Society worships at the altar of potential. We tell gifted children they're destined for greatness, as if destiny were a train they could board with a ticket made of IQ points. But potential is a cruel god. It thrives on "not yet." You could be so much more. Don't waste your gift. Imagine what you'll achieve. These phrases are psychological landmines. They equate being with doing, love with performance. The child learns a terrible lesson. You are not a person, you are a promise. And what happens when the promise feels impossible to keep? The gifted child does not merely fear failure, they fear mediocrity. They fear being ordinary. And so, they learn to wear masks, to be the person others expect them to be. They master the art of pretense, not out of deception, but out of survival. They become performers in a grand play where the audience demands only brilliance, never struggle. And when exhaustion sets in, when the weight of expectation becomes too much, they have nowhere to turn. Because who comforts the gifted child when they say, "I am tired"? Who believes them when they whisper, "I do not want to be special anymore"? And so, they hide their pain behind achievements. They mask their loneliness with accolades. They bury their exhaustion beneath the applause of a world that sees only the gift, never the cost. But here's the question no one asks. What happens when the gifted child breaks? What happens when they can no longer carry the weight of their own identity? Do they fade into the background, forgotten by the very world that once adored them? Do they shatter under the pressure, pieces of their soul scattered like glass on the cold, indifferent ground? Or do they find a way, some impossible, miraculous way, to escape the prison of their own mind? That is the question we must answer. That is the truth we must confront. Because the gifted child does not remain a child forever, and the burden of brilliance does not simply disappear. It lingers, it festers, it consumes. And if they cannot escape it, then who will? History's graveyards are littered with failed prodigies. The poets who stopped writing, the musicians who quit, the former gifted kids now paralyzed by mediocrity's specter. Their tragedy isn't that they fell, it's that no one taught them how to stand still. Take the case of Sophia, a chess champion at 14. By 22, she'd abandoned the game entirely. In therapy, she confessed, "I didn't quit because I lost passion. I quit because winning was the only way people saw me. I wanted to be loved, not admired." Here lies the great illusion. Giftedness doesn't elevate you. It isolates you. It builds a glass tower where you're forever watched, but never held. So we arrive at the question that haunts every former gifted child. Was I ever truly brilliant or just precocious? The answer is irrelevant. What matters is this. You were taught to conflate speed with depth, talent with worth. And now, as an adult, you're left with a soul split in two. One part racing toward an impossible standard, the other grieving a self you never got to be. But what if the curse isn't your mind? What if it's the world that failed you? The cleverest children learn the cruelest lesson first, that love is conditional upon performance. This is not an accident. The gifted child's suffering is not some tragic twist of fate. It is the inevitable result of a system designed to mine brilliance while neglecting the human being who contains it. To understand why, we must dissect the three silent engines that grind gifted minds into dust. Friedrich Nietzsche saw it coming. Whoever fights monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster, he warned. But what happens when the monster is being told you're extraordinary? From the moment a child is labeled gifted, they enter a hall of mirrors where ordinary achievements are pathologized. You could do better. Struggles are blasphemous. Someone like you shouldn't find this hard. Rest is betrayal. Think of all that potential you're wasting. Carl Jung recognized this trap. There is no greater burden on a child than the unlived life of its parents. But for the gifted, the burden is worse. It's the unlived life of every adult who ever projected onto them. Neurologically, giftedness isn't just being smart. It's experiencing reality differently. Studies of gifted brains show hyperactive prefrontal cortices that analyze everything to exhaustion, overstimulated amygdalae that feel failures as physical pain, dopamine systems wired to crave intellectual validation. Jean-Paul Sartre grasped the consequence. Hell is other people. But for the gifted, hell is being trapped in a mind that outruns its own happiness. Consider Lucas, who at 8 could debate philosophy but couldn't sleep through the night. His brain wouldn't stop asking why about existence. By 30, he developed what therapists call gifted kid burnout. a state of existential fatigue from decades of overthinking basic human experiences. Here's the dirty secret no one tells gifted children. The world doesn't want your depth, it wants your output. Arthur Schopenhauer saw this coming. Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. But society only pays for the first kind. So the gifted child learns to compartmentalize their intensity. No one wants to hear about quantum physics at dinner. Fake normalcy to avoid alienation. I'll pretend calculus doesn't excite me. Starve their curiosity to feed others comfort. I should focus on practical skills. Viktor Frankl's warning becomes their unspoken epitaph. An abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is normal behavior. Now, the trap snaps shut. You were rewarded for outperforming peers. You were punished for needing help. Now you can't distinguish between love and achievement. The data is damning. Gifted children are twice as likely to develop perfectionism disorders. Former gifted kids dominate adult therapy offices with imposter syndrome. The highest IQ populations show increased rates of existential depression. This isn't coincidence, it's by design. A system that idolizes potential must create permanent seekers, never finders. But what if the diagnosis is wrong? What if you're not burned out, but awakening? What if the pain isn't from failing to meet expectations, but from realizing the expectations were lies? The most haunting ghost is the person you were supposed to become. Every former gifted child knows this specter. It whispers in the silence between heartbeats. You were special once. What happened? But here's the truth no one tells you. That ghost isn't real. It's a manufactured nightmare, stitched together from stolen dreams and predatory expectations. Let's dissect its anatomy. History loves its prodigy narratives. Mozart composing at 5, Picasso mastering realism at 7, Terence Tao winning Olympiads at 10. These stories become cultural weapons, used to bludgeon ordinary genius into shame. But consider, Mozart died bankrupt and miserable at 35. Picasso spent decades trying to unlearn his technical perfection. Tao, now a Fields medalist, speaks openly about hating competition math as a child. The lie isn't that brilliance exists. It's that brilliance must follow a predetermined path. Aldous Huxley saw through this. The surest way to work up a crusade is to promise paradise and threaten hell. For the gifted, paradise is fulfilling your potential, and hell is wasting it. But who defined these terms? Gifted brains don't just think differently, they exhaust differently. Research shows hyperconnectivity means every decision triggers cascading simulations of possible outcomes, leading to analysis paralysis. Dopamine starvation occurs when intellectual challenges disappear, explaining why successful, gifted adults often self-sabotage. Mirror neuron overload makes absorbing others' emotions physically draining, the root of gifted empathy fatigue. This isn't weakness, it's biological betrayal. Your brain, optimized for complexity, becomes allergic to mundane survival. Like a race car engine idling in traffic, it begins to eat itself alive. Modern capitalism weaponizes gifted trauma through hustle culture. If you're so smart, why aren't you rich? Optimization porn, life hacking what should be spontaneous. Meritocracy myths. You have no excuse not to succeed. The message is clear. Your worth is your output. Jean-Paul Sartre anticipated this hell. When rich people fight for equality, They're fighting to keep their riches. Similarly, when society praises potential, it's really demanding perpetual striving. Meet Elena, a former math prodigy now working 80-hour Wall Street weeks. "I know I'm miserable," she confesses. "But if I quit, what was it all for? All those competitions, all that pressure. I need to prove it meant something." This is the phantom's cruelest trick. It makes you complicit in your own suffering. You chase achievements not for joy, but to retroactively justify childhood sacrifices. Viktor Frankl's observation becomes your prison. When we can't change our situation, we're forced to change ourselves. But what if wasted potential is actually liberated potential? What if your laziness is your mind rebelling against artificial benchmarks? Your failure is your soul, divorcing others' expectations. Your exhaustion is wisdom, a refusal to keep playing rigged games. The phantom isn't chasing you. You're chasing it. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop. There are two types of fire, one that burns you to ash, and one that forges you into steel. Giftedness is both. The curse depends on what you choose to feed the flames. The moment comes for every wounded prodigy, when the ache of pretending becomes greater than the fear of truth. When the cost of performing genius outweighs the terror of discovering your actual self. This is where real transformation begins. Carl Jung warned, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." For the gifted, this terror is existential, because accepting yourself means killing the exceptional child everyone loved. Consider Nathan, a former chess champion who quit at 22. "I realized I didn't love chess. I loved how chess made people love me. The day I quit was the first time I breathed without calculating my next move." This is the first alchemy, letting your gifted identity die so your human self can live. Gifted trauma teaches you to despise. Slow thinking, no, you must be quick to prove intelligence. Simple pleasures, no, you must pursue grand achievements. Average days, no, you must constantly progress. Rebellion begins when you read a book without analyzing it, enjoy a hobby you'll never monetize, have a conversation without performing. Friedrich Nietzsche hinted at this salvation. One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. Your chaos isn't failure, it's raw material. First, anti-productivity rituals. A. Schedule underachieving hours. B. Practice doing things badly on purpose. 2. Neurodivergent self-care. A. Replace time management with energy cycling. B. Treat overstimulation as physical pain. 3. Shadow work. A. Journal answers to, "Who would I be if no one was watching?" B. Make art you'll never show anyone. Arthur Schopenhauer was right. Talent is like a marksman who hits a target others cannot reach. Genius is like a marksman who hits a target others cannot see. The world didn't need another prodigy. It needed the real you all along. You start noticing how wasted potential was really potential wasted on others' dreams. How laziness was your psyche enforcing necessary rest. How failure was freedom in disguise. Viktor Frankl's wisdom echoes. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. The alchemy is complete when you realize you weren't falling behind. You were being forged into something incomprehensible to those who only understand straight lines. The child who saw too much becomes the adult who sees through everything, and that is their real power. This is the final revelation, the one that unravels the entire curse. Your suffering wasn't the price of your gift, it was the gift itself. The very sensitivity that made childhood unbearable becomes the lens through which you'll remake your world. Every existential crisis you survived was initiation. 1. The perfectionism that paralyzed you? A bullshit detector too fine-tuned for this world. 2. The alienation you felt? The necessary distance to see systems others take for granted. 3. The burnout that felled you? Your psyche's strike against fraudulent living. Carl Jung saw it. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. But what he didn't say is this: the pain is the consciousness. Studies of adult genius show a shocking pattern. Nobel laureates are 22 times more likely to have mood disorders. Groundbreaking artists show off-the-chart sensitivity. Revolutionary scientists frequently report childhood trauma. This isn't coincidence, it's evolution. Your brain wasn't malfunctioning, it was specializing. Like deep-sea creatures developing bioluminescence to navigate eternal dark, you grew psychological adaptations for a world not yet here. Friedrich Nietzsche's madman was right. One must have chaos within to give birth to a dancing star. Your chaos wasn't your failure, it was your forge. History's real pattern breakers share your scars. Van Gogh's hypersensitivity became transcendent art. Alan Turing's social struggles birthed computer science. Virginia Woolf's fragility crafted literary revolution. Their disorders weren't disorders. They were evolutionary features in a world not ready for them. Your depression? Perhaps vision fatigue from seeing what others ignore. Your anxiety? Maybe preemptive grief for a dying civilization. Your exhaustion? Likely energy conservation for the long emergency ahead. The omega point awaits your realization. You were never meant to fit the old world. Your mind didn't break, the system did. Now the choice is yours. 1. Keep trying to fix yourself into a shape this crumbling world understands. 2. Become what you've always been, the architect of the next one. Viktor Frankl's words take new meaning. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. But here's the secret. By changing yourself, you change what's possible for everyone. As a child, they told you, you're special. They weren't wrong. You're not just special, you're necessary. The world doesn't need another polished genius. It needs your particular madness, the cracks through which the future streams in. The curse was always the gift. The breakdown was the beginning. Now, begin.
Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was insightful and educative. If you like this video, do well to click like, share, and subscribe for more insightful videos like this. See you later. Bye.